Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. Baltimore Positive. We are positively taking the Maryland Crab Cake Tour back out on the road this week. We will be at Costas in Dundalk on Friday. I'll be wearing long sleeves, and it's getting to be that time of the year. We got a big football game. We got a big baseball game. I will have Raven scratch-offs to give away on Friday at Costas. We'll also be reconvening at some point during the baseball playoffs, that we hope the Orioles are still a part of on October the 11th. We'll be at Pizza John's in Essex. It's Luke's birthday next week. It's my birthday 2 weeks from now. We've decided to eat pizza and crab cakes and cheesesteaks and those delicious crinkle cut fries. And I'll probably get Luke a scoop of strawberry ice cream or whatever. What's your favorite ice cream? I don't even know. You mint chocolate chip guy? I don't know your ice cream.
Oh, no, 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 not mint chocolate. In fact, that's the funny joke with my family. My dad years and years ago thought mint chocolate chip was my favorite, and it wasn't. So that joke is
When's
carried
the
on
last time you've had mint chocolate chip? I mean, have you
when I was
gone
a
on a?
kid. I mean, I,
Yeah,
I, I
I'm going to
don't.
get you some mint chocolate chip then, just to
No,
see.
no, no. I don't like I don't like mint flavored things. I won't eat it. The only mint flavored thing that I will have is gum or a literal
Scoop of
mint.
vanilla ice cream in a kitty cup for Luke Jones in Essex on his first birthday
I
on
like
October 11th.
regular chocolate chip ice cream. I like, but
I'm going to
you
get you
know,
whatever you want. It's your birthday. If you want pepperoni,
yeah.
you get pepperoni. You want mushroom, you get mushroom, you get pizza, whatever you want. October 11th, we're going to do that. Our friends at Jiffy Lube, they power Luke up. Luke's giddy. I mean, like we wake up this week and I had all my old News American editors, all the guys are my serious OG, the people that taught me how to teach you, right? Like literally these people that were huge in my life. And I said, we used to have these budget meetings about what's the headline and what's not. And we wake up every day. This is one of those times where like, is it Tyler Linderbaum? Is it the 1 and 2? Is it how good the Bills are, or is it are we getting ready for the playoffs? And what happened to Grayson Rodriguez? And it's been a whirlwind week for sports here, and I hope it continues for the next month. I hope that we squeeze something out of the baseball thing we haven't really squeezed out of here since 1997 to play for most of the month to get to that level. But meantime, Grayson Rodriguez, we've been questioning, wondering bullpen on the side. When's he going to pitch? And it turns out, as you broke on the WNST tech service, the all new and improved WNST tech service, this is, it's problematic, but it's not shocking.
Yeah, it's not shocking. I mean, what was it, 2.5 weeks ago when we started asking the question? I mean, when is this going to progress? I mean, he'd been throwing bullpens for a couple weeks now. I saw him throw a bullpen even during the last homestand. I don't think he necessarily was a setback as much as it's a lat strain. And I said this at the time in early August. I mean, keep in mind, this was an injury, a similar injury that sidelined him for 3 months 2 years ago when he was on the cusp of being called up to the major leagues in early June of 2022. So I think this was always a possibility. Now the Orioles remained optimistic and were trying to get him back. And, if this had occurred maybe 2 or 3 weeks earlier than it did, maybe if it occurred at the All-Star break, let's say, I think there was probably a better chance that he would be back. But Mike Elias, he was reading the tea leaves a little over a week ago when he spoke to the media at or in the dugout at Camden Yards to start the last homestand, that he acknowledged they were running out of time. They were running out of days. They were running out of calendar, however you want to describe it. And when he didn't join the club on the trip, still hadn't been facing live hitters. I think I even said to you a couple days ago, I think we've reached a territory now where you don't expect it until we hear some progress that he's facing live hitters, throwing live BP, throwing a sim game, something like that. And lo and behold, Brandon Hyde announced Wednesday prior to the game that Grayson Rodriguez has been shut down for the remainder of 2024. As it pertains to his career, I think it's probably the smart move, right? I mean, you don't want to rush him back. He's still important to their future, even if you continue to have some questions here about his durability and all of that.
But
And I
the
think
business decision is if he can't get guys out 2 weeks from now, you just have to admit it and say
that's
he can't do it. And that's not injuries are, I mean, Bradish can't do it right now, and Means can't, none of those guys can do it either. And I think the lat strain thing, when we talk about max effort and we talk about max effort one time, go do anything with your body one time and see how it makes you feel the next morning. At max effort and thinking about what the shoulder, the elbow, the body, the leg strength, the kick, the back, just everything that needs to be involved in playing Major League Baseball, especially as I get older. You don't know anything about this. You're about to celebrate a young birthday, but I'm getting older. Uh, it's like it's an incredible thing to be 28 and to be able to do that and to wake up every day healthy and whatever Cal Ripken did for 17 years, whatever, how crazy that, if it was 14 years, whatever it was, not missing a game, not missing a day, not missing an inning in large cases, that'll just never be done again. But it is weird with modern science, as much as Jim Palmer would say they baby these guys, right? Like literally how troublesome all of it is from, investment standpoint, pitching standpoint, fan standpoint, the, the the kids that are getting hurt, like just all of it. But it's really affected this franchise in a way that like we're going to beat up Elias and you're going to say he didn't get enough bullpen and when they didn't won't don't win the World Series, whatever happens next month. But like I look, it's not uncanny. I mean, they should be figuring out how they're training these guys and doing that across the industry, chewing them up in the way that Billy Martin did 30 years ago with Keo and those guys he had. Um, but whatever this is for the Orioles, it's a shame. That's all. I mean, he's their Jim Palmer, right? This is Jim Palmer not being able to pitch in '66, and Palmer had those problems back in the '60s, per all of the back of the baseball cards and the history that I hear and know. But it's a shame. That's all. It's a shame Bradish isn't here. It's a shame Means arm fell off. I mean, like it's a shame Batista last year because you'll write the book on it, because you're the baseball guy. But this could have been crazy next week. I mean, they might have not have needed Eflin. I mean, just all sorts of things that happened that if they win the World Series ever under Elias, this is a heck of a story and a storyline about this kid who was going to be the best pitcher, not being available.
Well, and it's a lesson and a reminder that these rebuilds, and when you get out of a rebuild and you're in a position to win and you win 101 games and you have the number one seed and then you get swept in the division series and then you go out and acquire an ace in the offseason, not everything goes to plan. And it doesn't mean it's going to be linear, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to have setbacks and bumps in the road. I mean, the second half of the season, just from a performance standpoint, is a great lesson of that. But
Well,
yeah,
Adley Rutschman, it better be a bump in the road for him. It better not be anywhere near what's going to happen for him. You know what I mean? Because some of it's been off the cliff a little bit, and not just injury, but just in actual performance and saying, where are you going to be? And the good news is they got next week to, rectify it. Gunnar Henderson's trying to rectify it in New York already this week.
well, I mean, we can get to Adley Rutschman in a moment, but just to finish the thought, I mean, I think back to when they acquired Corbin Burns at the time, Orioles fans and the Orioles, even if there at that point there was some knowledge about what was going on with Kyle Bradish, and we had known John Means had been shut down right before the postseason last year, but Corbin Burns, Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, John Means. That was imagined, that was envisioned, that was
That was the
dreamed
Ford
about.
it was going to go next week, right? Like
And
literally. Yeah.
they literally got one of them to mid-August, let alone October. So, I mean, it's just pitching's fragile. And I don't say that to make an excuse for the Orioles specifically, but look across the industry. I mean, look at other teams. Look at the Atlanta Braves. Look at other teams that have been ravaged by pitching injuries. I mean, the Astros dealt with it a ton early in the season. It's a big reason why they have the record they do right now, which is was still good enough to win the West, but they're not the number one seed or the top, top two seed getting a first round bye, even though it's come to into form and looks way better now than it had. But it's tough. That's why you need as much depth as possible. That's why, one thing that we've talked about some, and I think we'll continue to talk about uh, whether the Orioles make a deep October run or not, is I do think this organization probably needs to pivot and put a greater emphasis on developing their own pitching at this point in time because you kind of see what happens, and we know they've gone very college hitter heavy early in drafts so over the course of the Elias era, which
Because that's what
has been.
Sig Meidel's blackjack book tells him to do. Tells him to stick on seven. You know what I mean? Like the
But you
hitters
need
don't get
pitching.
hurt. The hitters
But you
don't get
but you
hurt.
do, but you need pitching. Like you can't just.
Trade for that. We'll pay for that. We'll buy Zach Eflin. We'll buy Corbin
I
Burns
hear what you're saying, but
until
now
you have to pay Gunnar Henderson. I got you.
I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, we're talking about a rotation that is barely holding on at this point. I mean, Zach Eflin is the number two, and he just issued a career high 5 walks on Wednesday night. Now, I'm not saying that that means he's hurt or that he's doomed or anything like that, but let's call a spade a spade. Everyone's optimistic because they've taken two from the Yankees. Great. The bats have come alive the last couple of days. But if I told you a month ago this is what their playoff rotation was going to look like, let alone a couple months ago, you wouldn't be talking about optimism of making a deep run and going to the World Series. It's just, it is what it is. Now, Dean Kramer has pitched well. Albert Suarez has been a great story. You hope that they can continue that. But we've also seen the last couple nights, even when you score runs, this is a grind having to use four, five, six relievers. And how many of those relievers are you going to trust to be able to do that multiple times as you get into this? So it's a challenge. It's a slog. It's a grind. I mean, and it's going to be. Even Corbin Burns, I mean, he's not someone that throws 8 or 9 innings every time he goes out there, even as an ace. So my point is with that, not that it's impossible or not that they won't be able to do it, but this is another blow to the upside, right? I mean,
They're
they're
going to
they're
need better performance than what we've seen. That's all. They're going to have to play above the mean for a month. I mean, literally from where they were. Dude, that being said, I look up, I was at Cooper's North grabbing a delicious chicken Sammy watching the game on Wednesday night. And, Westy's back and Mounty's back. And I make fun of that because it's just like, the, the more I watch the local performance, and hey, once next week starts and Ben McDonald's not there anymore, and I got some jackwagon on TBS or John Smoltz or who's not a jackwagon by the way, I like John, but the love in with the team and all of that. At the it's not who's that guy anymore. These guys are back now. How they're going to perform, but they are a different team than they were 2 weeks ago. You will admit that Westberg
yeah,
provides some straw that stirs a drink in some way.
of course. I'm not just because I'm laying out what I'm concerned about
I
doesn't
think they
mean
can
that
win
they're.
the World Series. Do you think they can win the World Series or not? Because
Do I
you're
think
being
they can?
negative around here, and I can't have that. How are you going to get a job at Masson if you're going to be down on the Orioles like this when this thing falls
Can,
apart?
can they win a World Series? Of course, because anyone that's going to be in this tournament can win a World Series. If you want my objective opinion on whether I think they're going to have enough pitching to make that deep of a run, no, I don't think that. That said, with Burns and Eflin, they can certainly win a wild card series. They can certainly go to Yankee Stadium and win a division series because we've seen them even without Burns pitching in games one or two that they can do that if they're going to swing the bats.
Yeah,
But
I'm
my
not thinking
point,
about them avoiding Cleveland or New York or whatever. I'm thinking like, how are they going to beat Detroit next week? How are they going to beat Scooble?
right? But if you want my honest assessment, my honest opinion on whether that what they have from a pitching standpoint is going to hold up to win 4 different series or to win three to get to the World Series, I don't feel great about that. But again, I would have said the same thing about the Texas Rangers at this time a year ago. I would have said similar. I would have had off. Wouldn't even have talked about the Arizona Diamondbacks at this time a year ago. So you don't know, and that's what
We
makes
weren't
this
talking
fun.
about
And
the Detroit Tigers 3 weeks ago.
right,
And you
and
might
the
be talking about them 3 weeks from now because they got a guy that can go out and stuff the bats up your ass in game one and steal game one. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, things happen when you can do that. We need to make sure Corbin Burns and Zach Eflin, somebody's going to be that guy next week.
well, and at the same time, the Tigers have been so good in the month of September. They can have a bad 24 hours at Camden Yards next week, or however it shakes out, because Kansas City's still right there as well, and be done. Right? I mean, we saw this with the Orioles last year. They won 101 games. Even with the Batista injury, they held together so well, so admirably in the month of September that you still thought, hey, they can do this because they've continued to do this the last 5 weeks. And then they got to the division series and it was over like that. I mean, we barely had time to get barbecue at 3 places
Didn't
in
even
the
get a
Dallas
Dr.
area.
Pepper. I went to Texas and didn't get a Dr. Pepper. That's
Right.
what
So so
happened there.
so again, that's not to throw cold water on it, and it's not to say that they can't make a deep run, but you just don't know. And the Yankees are a great example of that on Wednesday. Nestor Cortez set you think is going to start the game, and he's got an elbow that's barking. And suddenly you wonder if he's going to be back for any of the postseason, let alone the division series, let alone certainly not starting on Wednesday night. And then you see what Marcus Stroman does, and the Orioles just tee off on him. So you don't know. I mean, all of this is so fragile, and it's not the same as a team losing their franchise quarterback. There's no player, even an ace pitcher, doesn't hold that kind of doesn't move the needle that much in terms of their absence or their performance in general. But boy, it can change quickly. It can change quickly if a team star player there turns his ankle on Thursday or Friday or Saturday, whether it's a meaningful game or just out there trying to stay sharp. So there's so much that we don't know, and that's why you ask me, can they do that? Yeah, of course that can happen. Do I think that's the most likely outcome in terms of a deep, deep run with this pitching staff, with how much attrition they've suffered? That's where I have a tough time. But if they swing the bats the way they have the last couple of nights, and to your point, yeah, Jordan Westburg looks like Jordan Westburg, and Ramon Arias looks like Ramon Arias, and we've seen
Cologne
Ryan
looks like
Mountcastle
Cologne
come
to
back.
some. Yeah, I
So
mean,
yeah, well, I was talking specifically about the
no,
offense. I mean,
I'm
we've
talking about
talked.
all these guys coming back. Like I'm sort of shocked they're all coming back and looking rounding in that they don't look lost the way Kobe Mayo looked lost, right?
Well, I mean, but Kobe Mayo's had never played in the majors. Westberg, I agree with you. Arias, I mean, Arias missed 3 weeks. That's not, he didn't miss 3 months, right? I mean, Mountcastle missed about a month.
I mean, but
So
just Westberg made a nice play at second
Westberg,
base,
sure.
on a high hop and like just
Well, he's one of their best
defense.
players. He's one of their best players. I mean, we talked about this. I mean, that's why it was so devastating when they lost him the day after the trade deadline. You augment your roster and make all these moves, and then suddenly you lose the guy that's been your second or third, now I would say second best because of how much Rutschman has struggled the second half of the year, at least in terms of 2024. You know, lose your second best player position player wise. So that's going to take a toll on anyone. So yeah, when he's back, I mean, I feel way better about their offense. But yeah, the defense or the pitching. I mean, 2, 3 weeks ago, you were still hoping to have Grayson Rodriguez back in some capacity. The bullpen, it's better. It's deeper with Danny Cool. I'm assuming he's right. You need Cano to be right. We know that he's dealt with the forearm a couple weeks ago. He was shaky on Tuesday night when he pitched. You need Sir Anthony Dominguez to not give up the long ball or issue walks. Hey, Gregory Soto has looked better. That's a positive. But again, these are a lot of pieces that are either unknowns or guys that you've doubted at different points. So
And the
we'll
level of
see.
confidence is for Hyde to say, I'm trying to get these guys more confident. I mean, in their
Yeah,
heart of hearts, they're trying to lead these guys. I mean, it's part of Harbaugh on the sidelines talking to Justin Tucker and Attaboy and trying to fluff these guys up after it's been a rough slog the last 8 weeks. I'll fluff them up by saying they look like a different team with Westberg and Urias. They look like a different team when they're going to New York and having confidence and not headhunting or being headhunted about. The Indians are the best team. The Tigers are playing great right now. Royals are trying to find themselves. Yankees have similar problems to the Orioles. I mean, both these teams could have won 105 games if they were constructed. I mean, if the Yankees came out with their full $300 million arsenal, they would have, they'd be further ahead than they are. But that being said, I don't in any way. I'm going to write Mr. Rubenstein and the Whistler and Katie Griggs and Greg Bader and I'm going to write Jennifer, whatever her name is. I'm going to write all them a letter. But on the baseball side, I'm not going to be beating up Mike Elias or Sig Mejdal after half their not half their entire rotation is either in the infirmary or in a sling. Like I don't. He built this team to have Bradish, Means, Batista. Now, if you want to beat him up about the training program and what they're doing to these kids' arms, but it's happening everywhere. It's not just happening here. So,
sure.
they wanted to beat Harbaugh up a couple years ago about his trainer who was an anti-vax wacko. And everybody's running around out there germing each other up. That's leadership too, just like John Harbaugh's penalties are leadership, and but the leadership for this team, I can't blame Mike Elias or Sig Mejdal or their training methods for arms falling off when it's going on everywhere, including my dude Nestor Cortez, the real nasty Nestor. Um, but they're going to enter the playoffs this week with other teams' pitchers, right? The Brewers pitcher, the Rays, Phillies pitcher, they don't have their own because their guys' arms fell off. Brash almost won a Cy Young last year. Means throwing no hitters, came back for 5 minutes and looked like John Means. Those arm fell off again. Batista was throwing. I mean, that might have been the best relief effort we've ever seen in the history of the franchise. Forget Stanhouse and
Zach,
whatever.
go
Zach
look at Zach.
Britton.
No,
I,
Zach Britton had one of the greatest reliever seasons in baseball history. I mean, but you're right. I mean, I'm not going to argue with how great Batista was last year.
there's no way for me to examine them playing baseball and getting eliminated because Dean Kramer's not good enough, although I'm buying stock on Dean Kramer because he's got nice hair. And the girls like it. But if they don't make it, and if Dean Kramer's not good enough, and Suarez isn't good enough, and Eflin gives up 6 walks next week, and Skubal goes 3 hits, and Adley Rutschman looks twisted like a pretzel, and Westberg can't find his timing, and like whatever that happens, I'm not going to be the guy. I think you're going to be tougher on him about not getting enough bullpen than I'm going to be to say they got the wrong bullpen. Maybe Sir Anthony and Soto and Webb and these, what they have, but the real bullpen was Batista. the real rotation was Bradish and Means and Wells was going to give him 160 innings this year. And like I can't as we go into it, and I'll probably write this next week and I'll talk about it in every segment. Um, the amount of injuries they've had's been unlike anything I've seen. And I would put this up for all of your history with the Orioles and mine, which is a little longer than yours. Dude, we didn't have years where Cuellar and McNally and Palmer and Dobson didn't pitch. We didn't have years where McGregor and Flanagan and Stone and I mean, Dennis Martinez drank his way out of baseball for a little while. And, Sammy Stewart, guys that had problems, and we could talk about it 50 years later, but their arms didn't fall off and they weren't unavailable. And I don't even remember, other than failed prospects who had $50 million arms and a 50-cent head, like Rocky Coppinger and guys that were tweeners and guys like Jeff Ballard that were 5 minutes. Like all of these guys I'm mentioning, Rodrigo Lopez, I'm just throwing names out there. Wei and Chen, pick anybody, Miguel Gonzalez. They didn't have 4 of their starters hurt in the same year ever, even when it was who was the pinup girl's husband? Benson, the Mets guy. I mean, all
Oh
these
yeah.
Rena pitchers, all of these Doug Drabeks, all of the washed up Cy Young guys. I mean, Sammy Sosa wasn't even hurt when he came here. Rafael Palmeiro, no speaky. He could even play because he was taking steroids, didn't get hurt. But I don't remember anything in the history of the Baltimore Orioles that would look like last year's 5 pitchers who were going to take us to the playoffs last year having to literally be completely extracted and sent to the hospital for surgery, and to have the general manager have to go out and buy $20 million pitchers. Peter's rolling over in his grave thinking about two $20 million pitchers in the same rotation. With all these cheap baby birds playing like MVPs and rookies of the year and 1-1s, and they're all making nothing. Um, this is a weird thing, and I don't think they're going to win the World Series, but they can. They might, because they can beat the Yankees, and somebody else can beat the Indians, and somebody else's arm could fall off, and somebody else could take an inside pitch and have something go wrong.
Sure.
Aaron Judge could hurt his back, putting the heat on in the Hilton tonight, or the Four Seasons. They don't say the Hiltons anymore. Um, but I'm not going to get down on them. I just want to say that before it starts, before the Ravens do whatever they're going to do against the Bills, before we go watch baseball next week and hopefully for a couple of weeks. I don't want to say they can do no wrong in my mind, but if they take a facer and the Tigers beat their ass because they come in with a better pitcher, I can't look at Mike Elias and say, you did us dirty and the bullpen wasn't good enough. And I know that you feel differently a little bit, but I'm down on their ownership about not giving me a press credential next week. I'll mention that in the 12th minute of my rant. That I'm way more down on how they're running the place than how Mike Elias is running the baseball team. That's the best part of their operation. It's the best part of their operation that they've had since I started shaving 35 years ago. The fact that they have these great baseball players and they make decisions even good enough to get them to the playoffs next week. Because the old man, John A., would have said, Corbin Burns, how much does he cost? You're dealing for $18 million pitchers at the trading deadline and trading my cheap second baseman away for a bag of donuts? We're not doing that. Turn Ortiz into a left fielder and we'll keep him. Like, come on, man. I mean, that's where I am with it because I've watched this trash for 30 years. Mike Elias has given them a chance to win next week. So there's my 2 cents for Mike Elias, who's also been respectful of me when I've been in a room with him. So I don't have any reason to like him or dislike him. I just think he's competent. And I think if he's going to be the fall guy or Brandon Hyde's going to be the fall guy, that's just dumb. That's dumb fan talk, and I don't want to hear it. And call the fan with that. Call Lock and Four with that trash. Don't call me. So there's my rant.
I, I mean, and I know you're not implying this. I've never suggested any of that. At the same time,
You,
I don't
you
think
think
they're beyond
Elias didn't do enough?
reproach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You think Elias could have done
With
more
the
in the
bullpen,
bullpen?
I've been
Yeah,
consistent about that
yeah.
because what I will say is Felix Batista didn't go down in spring training. Felix Batista didn't go down in June. They knew this. They knew this last August. They certainly knew it by late September and
They
October
signed
that
Kimbrel,
he
was the
wasn't
wrong
going to be
guy.
here,
They made the
and they
wrong.
signed Kimbrel. I
Yeah,
mean, it was a
yeah,
bad signing. I
yeah.
mean, now again, and I said this when they DFA'd him a couple weeks ago, and they officially released him earlier this week that I didn't foresee it going that bad to the point where Craig Kimbrel wouldn't even be on the roster. I just told you that he's not a shutdown closer anymore. So,
Well, the
and
Ravens
look,
got rid of Earl
when I
Thomas and still played playoff game. You know what I mean?
and when
Like, so bad signings. That's part of
things
doing
happen,
this, right?
sure.
Yeah.
I look, I'm not when I say what I'm talking about here, this is in no way is it implying that Michael Elias has done a poor job overall or anything like that. Far from it. That'd be insane to suggest that. At the same time, what I have said is because of everything you just laid out and knowing that pitchers break at the frequency that they do across baseball, you better have a lot of it in your system. You better have a lot in your system because you need a supply. Ozzie Newsome, you can never have enough corners, right? I mean, you can never have enough pitching in your system. And that's where I look at this and say, maybe with their organizational philosophy, not go so college hitter heavy early on in the draft. And you do need to mix in some more pitching early on in the draft. And you know what? The last couple drafts have reflected that. And now you're not going to bear the fruit of that a year or two after drafting pitchers in the fourth, fifth, sixth round. But I think we've seen them start to adjust in that way. But, I can't, I'm not faulting them for the state of their rotation. The bullpen is where I've said, I would have liked to see them do more. But they got Sir Anthony Dominguez, and that's been a good signing overall, or a good acquisition overall. Certainly won that. The Phillies, even though they have a good back end of the bullpen, they certainly haven't gotten much from Austin Hayes, who hasn't been able to stay on the field. So a win there. Gregory Soto has actually pitched in a couple semi-meaningful spots. Certainly very meaningful on Tuesday night and looked okay. So we'll see how that translates. I mean, you're talking about someone who as we talked about when they acquired him, was an all-star closer for Detroit a couple years ago. So not for a good team, but certainly has pitched in high leverage. So we're going to see. And again, expressing some concerns about their pitching or wondering whether they're going to have enough to make a deep run. I mean, that's absolutely fair, right? I mean, and that doesn't mean that you hate where they are right now or that Elias and Sig Mejdal have done a poor job or Brandon Hyde has done a poor job. It's where they are, right? And I'm actually glad you brought up some of the past examples that you did. I mean, go back to the early days of the franchise. The Orioles had a kiddie core of young pitchers, with Paul Richards, and you go back to the early '60s. They had lots of pitchers that got hurt. That's why I push back on when people always talk about all these pitchers that they romanticize it through 350 innings in a season. It's like, yeah, you remember them because they weren't the ones who got hurt and had season or had career-ending injuries. Those injuries happened back then too. Maybe not, it wasn't as glaring because there was no Tommy John surgery until very recently. It was the anniversary of Tommy John.
Well,
We're
I
going
brought
back
up
50
Billy
years.
Ball, and I would also bring up those Mets guys, Pulsifer, Isringhausen.
Sure.
They had, there's been some of that. I mean, look, Nolan Ryan and J.R. Richard never got it done in Houston, right? So, like, the pitchers, uh, uh, that's the industry, but
They
it's
break.
worse than it's ever been. My point is
Absolutely.
more money, more science, more medicine, more everything, and by far they've effed up their industry because they are not They've gone the wrong way on injuries where the NFL's trying to at least lie to you about concussion this and protocol that, and we're doing this, and the helmets are better, and we're doing, we're getting guys to the field, and DeMar Hamlin will never happen again. Like whatever they're pitching you, I made a pun. My eighth grade, Janice Miles, my eighth grade English teacher, would be really happy with that because she's listening now. But I would say the pitch for baseball needs to be whatever they're doing, they need to do it better because they're screwing they're screwing their own postseason up by not having their. I've been watching the postseason forever, all my life. I've never seen anything like this where Nestor Cortez isn't going to be available next week. Guys' arms are falling off. You'd say it's happened, but that's not how Jack Morris had a career. That's not how Palmer had a career. I mean, Strasburg's a great example of he should still be pitching. But the industry over the last 15 years and how much they pay these guys, I mean, even the great pitchers for the Dodgers and the Giants that fall apart every year in October and make $200 million, they're not pitching to their 38 or 40, right? I mean, like Messina pitched pretty late, and I think that's going to padding stats and stuff and Hall of Fame stats. I don't know how many he's going to get to 200 wins. When
Sure.
yeah, I mean, like literally, we were talking about 300 being a delineator that kept Tommy John and Don Sutton and these guys out of the Hall of Fame. Dude, I talk baseball all day. I know we don't get after this much, but I it is disheartening being a fan of the Orioles, being at this point and saying, look at what Mike Elias has had to do just to get major league pitchers, $40 million, give away the farm system, just to be able to pitch on Tuesday and Wednesday. Because if he didn't do that, they wouldn't be here because Cade Povich wasn't going to get it done. you know, the,
Right.
the,
Well, and let's be clear, they needed an ace, right? I mean, they needed to go out and get Corbin Burns, and what you're just saying, they drafted all this position talent with the idea that they would trade some of it for pitching. So it's not as though Corbin Burns was the result of any of these guys going down. It ruined your upside behind him, right? Corbin Burns is an ace, a former Cy Young Award winner, has looked excellent his last couple times out. Seems like he's even talked about it, fixing his cutter a little bit and getting it back to where it was. But,
but you
so
can
much
spend
of
all the
this,
money in the world trying
but
to draft
I want to go.
19-year-old kids, but at the end of the day, if they can't pitch when they're 24, I think the philosophy their Sig Meil's blackjack is this is a better way to do it than
You
than
need pitching though. Like
I agree with you
you keep
100%.
saying that, but like I understand what you're saying, but that means then you're not going to have pitching because inherently it's going to continue to break, and that's why you need as much as possible because not every pitcher does break, or pitchers have broken once and then they stay healthy after that. But you just said it. This is more than a Major League Baseball problem. If you talk to James Andrews and all the different, Meister and go down the list of the, in, I actually saw Will Carroll wrote he's got his injury blog that his own injury subscription newsletter. And he was writing about this the other day with it being the anniversary of Tommy John surgery. And, you look at it's roughly about 8 to 10 orthopedic, sports doctors who perform all these Tommy John surgeries for professionals, talking major leaguers, minor leaguers, maybe even high profile college pitchers. But James Andrews has talked about this for years. I mean, go look at the landscape of youth baseball. I mean, you have 13 and 14-year-olds getting cut on, right? I mean, this is more than a Major League Baseball problem to solve. I mean, this is Major League Baseball. This is college baseball. This is high school baseball. This is youth baseball. I mean, it's an entire culture of velocity and spin and breaking balls. And look, I just saw it. It came across the other day. I saw a tweet. I wish I had bookmarked it because I can't probably wouldn't be able to find it at the moment. But it talked about the home run per number of pitches of a certain velocity, right? It looked at the number of home runs per 93-mile-per-hour fastballs, the number of home runs per 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. And you know what? The harder pitchers throw, the more difficult it is to hit. The more spin they put on the ball, the more difficult it is to hit. The more horizontal and vertical break they put on the ball, the more difficult it is to hit. So I hear everything you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. And at the end of the day, however, these pitchers know that this is what gets them as makes them as successful as they've been. Tyler Glasnow's talked about this. I mean, someone who's got a bum elbow again. Other high profile pitchers have talked about this. I mean, where's the cutoff? This isn't performance enhancing drugs in the sense that these guys are doing anything illegal or against the rules, but at the same time, it's the same principle in terms of the culture that existed in Major League Baseball from the late 80s through the early 2000s, where you have enough people doing this, or you have enough pitchers that are willing to go the extra mile to throw harder and go to drive line or go to personal trainers or personal coaches to alter your mechanics and get you throwing harder and adding 2 or 3 miles per hour on your fastball to say, okay, well, that's not going to be me because I don't want to get Tommy John surgery. Well, guess what? That guy might get left behind and may not get drafted, or he may not get out of double A, or he may not last in the major leagues because he doesn't throw hard enough. So you have a culture, and again, it's not like steroids in the sense where there's a clearly ethically wrong thing going on here. I don't think any of this is necessarily wrong from a standpoint of, hey, I'm trying to add 2 miles per hour onto my fastball. If I tweak my mechanics and I twist my wrist this way and I torque my arm this way and I work out this way and I alter my delivery this way, I can do that. And then that's going to make me better. And then I'm going to be able to stick in the majors longer. And guess what? I'm going to get to make more money that way. So I don't know what the perfect solution here is, Nestor. I don't think anyone does. That's why this has been such a crisis for baseball. And, we've really gone way out into the weeds on this compared to just talking about Grayson Rodriguez, who's not even dealing with an elbow, but it's a lat. And, that's connected to the
Well,
shoulder.
we're
And
wondering why the
all of
Orioles
it's
pitching isn't
connected at
going
the
to
end
be
of the
good
day.
enough. I
But
think that the conversation is if the pitching isn't good
well,
enough next month, whose fault is it? Why couldn't they do better in the bullpen?
it's
I
everyone's fault.
I think that
It's
it's
everyone's
sort
fault,
of
right? I mean, it's the entire
amazing.
culture.
It's amazing that they're gonna have 5 or 6 pitchers who weren't even in their mind's eye last Christmas, who they're gonna rely on next week, and they're gonna rely on the bats that they've grown, and to your point, and gloves that they feel like they kicked the ball around a lot this year. They just have. They can't kick the ball around next week, especially with the kind of pitching they might have late in games and taxed as they go along. But I, I, could they be better constructed? Sure. Um, they all could. And I think they have a chance. And I'm going to be bullish on it's
Yeah.
baseball and let's see who's a pile diver. That's going to be the fun part, right? Let's none of these guys perform well last year. There's nobody on this team to me that has a clean soul to say I can count on that guy. Kind of think Westberg might be the guy that hits 429 next week because that's just feels like he's the pile diver in the pack to me, and it feels like Henderson's going to hit 333, and yeah, we're going to have those averages. I am a little worried about the 129s and the 085s, and who's going to be the 1 for 12 person. And runners in scoring position. God, dude, we've talked so much about the pitching. We'll break and we're going to do some football. Promise me that we're going to talk about hitting with runners in scoring position after the Bills and the Ravens play and before the Orioles play whoever they're going to play. Because to me, hitting with runners in scoring, these guys hit enough. It's just when they hit, right?
Yeah. Well, and let me leave you with one positive because,
Because you've
we
been
ended up talking
negative.
so much in a big picture sense about, oh, stop, stop with that. You're being ridiculous.
Well, you
I'm
don't
not going
think
to
they're going to win the World Series, so
who crushes. You're the one who crushes Masson and any state-run media and things like that. And then you're saying I'm being negative just because I'm stating obvious observations about the state of
I
the pitching staff
I
right now.
call
But
you. I call you the voice of reason here. So I don't expect anybody to believe a word I say, although I do make them think about it. I expect you to be the voice of reason. So your voice of reason is Vegas is going to have them as the third or fourth or fifth choice because that's what they are, right?
probably. And look, I mean, there's 3 months of really mediocre baseball to support that, but it's a clean slate. And I'll leave you with this because I didn't, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to look at this and keep it real. First series win for the Orioles against anyone since they took 2 or 3 from the White Sox at the beginning of the month. First series win against a team that's currently over 500 since they went to Seattle July 2nd through the 4th. So think about this. This is their first series win against a winning team. There are a couple others that, the Rays are a few games under 500, for example, but their first legit series win against a winning team since the 4th of July. So put that into perspective of how challenging these last 3 months have been, but also, hey, you just took the first two against the Yankees. You're a win or a Detroit loss away from clinching the top wild card spot, which they better win because I don't know if the Tigers are losing again, especially they play the White Sox
Well,
this
I don't want
weekend.
them to go on the
But
road. You know what I mean? I can't have them getting
sure, sure. I
inflamed
mean,
Monday
and
night.
but my point is they got to win one more game. I mean, they can't count on the Tigers losing one more because I mean, my goodness, Detroit's just playing well. But hey, it's go time. I mean, who knows? It's a best of three. As I said to you the other day, you could drop the Oakland A's into this tournament randomly, just as a gift to the city of Oakland. And you know what? They could end up beating a good team because it's a 3 game series. I mean, that's what we're talking about. That's why I've said all along, yes, you'd rather avoid it than if you had the chance to or not. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see.
Don't you miss the one and dones? Don't you miss those where Zach Britton done? Yeah, no,
It was
it
it
was
was better from
dramatic. Yeah.
it was better from a theater standpoint, but as I always said, that was akin to having a football team go through a 16 game schedule and then playing a playoff game that lasts about 7 minutes, like literally half of a quarter, right? I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about with
Or,
that
or you
format.
set them up and they play that stupid college thing at the 20-yard line and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
try to throw
So
fades.
so a best of three is still not very representative of you know, baseball and knowing what can happen and why you play 162 games. But at the very least, I like the higher seed having all 3 games in their building. So yeah, that's why it's so important for the Orioles to secure this top wild card spot. And I think they're going to. I mean, they've got Burns going in the finale, and even if they don't win this finale against the Yankees, they, going up against a Twins team that might not have anything to play for over the weekend. I mean, they're circling the drain. I mean, they did win Wednesday night, but we'll see. I mean, this is, hey, as we said the other day, and even with questions about the pitching or any questions you might have, let's enjoy this from the standpoint of this is the first time they've gone to the playoffs back-to-back years since I was 14 years old, Nestor. Think about that. I'm gonna be 41 next week. Since I was 14 years old was the last time they've done this. So Baltimore deserves some prosperity and dream, of course. It's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. But if you're asking me if I feel they have enough pitching to get through the all of October, which is to play November baseball, I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't have my doubts. But there's plenty of teams over the years that people have had doubts about, and then suddenly they're raising the trophy a month later. So who knows? That's why they play the games, and that's why we all love October baseball.
I still have all my pictures with Eric Davis and Alan Mills and Mike Bordick and Mike Messina and Elrod in the 1997. Not nearly as goggle and viciously oriented as some of these celebrations are. It was a little bit more muted back in Cal Ripken's era. It was fun and all that, and there's some fun pictures, but it wasn't. I didn't. I got wet, but I didn't get soaked. So I wasn't 14 when that happened, and I was in the real media then, Luke. I know. Hey, you know how that feels. Luke will be covering the games next weekend. He will be covering Sunday night the Bills and the Ravens. The WNST Tech Service is now back to life. It is brought to you by Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy. Bill Cole skipped out this week, but he did leave behind the Tech Service. If you want to get on the Tech Service, it's really easy. Grab your phone right now, and you text 410-821 WNST. That's 9678, and just text join. JOIN. That's not JOIN. Join or WNST, which is WNST to 410-821-9678. We're going to be giving away Raven scratch offs on Friday at Costas. I'm wearing my Coco shirt. I'm going to get down to Coco's and get some of those Coco shrimp, and get a little bit of her crab soup, get a salad, a Greek salad at the bar. But we're going to be at Costas on Friday, 2 to 5. I got Leonard Raskin coming by. I have an opening. If anybody hears, throw me an email, ness at baltimorepositive.com. I have these guys from the Capital Center who did this Capital Center book. I've been trying to get them on, so that's going to be a little bit of fun as well. And I'm doing a lot of oysters for our oyster recovery partnership. Our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions, 1-800 Clean Water, making it happen. And there are also my plumbers, but they keep my water crystal clean, just like the oysters keep the bay clean. And I am attending on Thursday night the Oyster Recovery Partnerships Gala. We're going to talk to a lot of oyster farmers. You're going to hear that next week and in the coming weeks into October. We will be releasing the 26 days and 26 ways. I am on number 21 right now. I did number 20 at the Chaucer in Highlandtown the other night. Had some delicious fried oysters there. So it's a lot of really cool oysters. So it's out on YouTube, but I'll have it to WNST and to Baltimore Positive. It'll be part of our radio shtick next month as well. I'm just trying to get through like this big football game and these couple of baseball games before the bullpen blows up. And that's right. I think they're going to win the World Series. I'm Nestor. He's Luke. We'll come back and argue some more. We don't really argue or fight. We just kind of intelligently discuss. That's why we call them wise conversations. Stay with us.